Greetings ladies and gentlemen, Adrian here, welcome back to the channel. After 2 years of being away, I've finally jumped back into Star Wars The Old Republic because of last month's announcement about Update 510, Jedi Under Siege, which will bring back some favorite companions, add Ossus as a planet, and it will also introduce a brand new Sith vs Jedi storyline, which is rumored to be leading nicely into the next expansion coming sometime next year apparently. So with being caught up with all that excitement, I've returned to the game. I've renewed my subscription to get my main character, my Sith warrior, all caught up and ready. And in this video, I'll share some returning player thoughts about my experiences from leveling and talk about some of the gearing systems the game currently has as well. There will be story spoilers towards the end of the video, so be warned about that. So let's begin with where I last stopped to give you guys some idea of where my Sith warrior was at. I was level 65, just about to start the Revan expansion and make my way up to Knights of the Fallen Empire and Knights of the Eternal Throne. Now, one key thing to note is that if you are a returning player just like me and you come back now with a subscription, you will automatically unlock all the content of the past, and that includes the 2 expansions and all the story updates that has come out since. And if you drop the subscription again, all that past content will be permanently unlocked for the next time you come back, even without the subscription. Let's talk about the leveling experience now. Even before I got to Knights of the Fallen Empire, I was already level 70 from level 65 just playing through the main story content in the Revan expansion. It took me about 4 to 5 hours of heavily playing chapter after chapter with pretty much no breaks in between, and because you are a subscriber, you do get that bonus XP, and I also didn't use any XP boosts or anything of that sort, so needless to say, leveling was really quick. Coming back as a sub now also gives you an Outlander token, a level 70 token, so that regardless of where you are or where your class is at in the story or in the game, you can just use that token to automatically boost yourself all the way up to start one of the 2 expansions. But keep in mind that when you do that, and if you haven't finished your class's main story, which I highly recommend you do, then you're gonna miss out on all that good stuff of having to make key decisions, romancing companions, and all that stuff. It will be automatically done for you, so your choices of the past is no longer relevant. What about the combat? Has anything changed there? Throughout my leveling, all 3 expansions, not much has changed. Everything feels familiar. I think they got rid of some skills for my warrior, but everything else regarding to my class trait trees still feel familiar, and I think that's the key word there. The combat still feels familiar. But the one thing I will point out though is that the difficulty in Star Wars The Old Republic today, 2018, especially for story mode, will definitely get you moving past the content at a very quick pace. And that could be important for you, especially for a returning player, and if you really want to catch up fast, then combat's not going to prove an issue for you. It's not going to be a roadblock. So playing through the expansions, especially the later 2 expansions, Knights of the Fallen Empire and Eternal Throne, the story mode difficulty is really easy. Your companions are pretty much in God mode, and if you put them to heal, then you can go crazy all out DPS. They do a good job tanking as well. And if you put them in DPS, and if you don't have good enough gear, then you may take a lot of hits. But because of the way boss fights work in some of these SWTOR chapters, you will have all those cold toe tanks or the health tanks littered around the fight arena or the location of the boss fight, so you don't really have too much to worry about. Now, if you're upset at hearing how easy the game is, they do have other modes of difficulty as well. There's a middle tier and then the highest tier if you really want to challenge yourself and have really good gear. Now, moving on, the one thing I absolutely want to point out to players that haven't been back for a very long time is progression once you hit level 70. While leveling from 65 to 70, every time you ding a level, nothing really happens, and as for me personally, I can't even tell if my character or my class has gotten stronger with every new level because of the difficulty that I played with and how useful my companion is. But 70 onwards, things change because of post-cap progression system called Galactic Command, or CXP for short. So this one's not exactly new, but because I've been away for 2 more years, it sorta is. So what is Galactic Command for all of you players that are in the same boat? It's SWTOR's endgame progression mechanic, whereby everything you kill, every chapter you complete, anything that awards XP will now translate into CXP. So your bar will continually move past 70, and every time you fill that bar, you earn a Galactic Command rank. XP sources comes from daily activities like heroics, flashpoints, starfighter, PvP, and of course chapter stories. So there's lots of ways to earn CXP, and some methods are more effective than others, like doing a solo flashpoint for instance will tend to reward you with more CXP compared to a daily quest. But here's the catch though, unlike other MMOs that utilizes a post-progression leveling system like this, every time you fill up that bar you usually get something tangible to put back into either your class or your gear or some other post-level cap progression system. Take the Elder Scrolls Online for example. Every time you fill your experience bar post-level 50, you get a Champions Point, which you can then spend into increasing various different stats to enhance the effectiveness of your class in combat. In Guild Wars 2, every time you fill up the bar post-level 80, depending on where you're at the game's progression, you could either earn a Spirit Shard or earn Mastery Points if you're working towards unlocking a certain Mastery track. In SWTOR at the moment, every Galactic Command rank you get rewards you with an RNG loot box that you can open right away, and it even has its own UI element for opening this command rank loot box. What's in it? It's totally down to RNG. So 5 or 6 things could pop up. Some of them includes companion gifts. You could even get a buff or booster to earn more CXP. Most times you'll get salvageable trash that you can then turn into CXP as well, raw CXP, but it doesn't offer much. And probably the best thing to come out of these command rank crates are the gear. You'll get a chance to get some orange gear, and if you're really lucky, that said gear will come with preloaded mods and other stats enhancer, but if you're unlucky, then it's an empty shell and you gotta go put stuff in yourself manually. So there's 300 ranks in total. Tier 1 is command rank from 1 to 90, Tier 2 91 to 180, and Tier 3 181 to 300. And the difference between each tier is simply the amount of CXP you'll need to hit the next rank in that particular tier. So in my time back, I think I've made it up to command rank 40 or 45. So that means I've had 45 chances to open up these loot boxes. And I gotta tell you, out of 45 times, I did not even complete a full set of level 70 orange gear or something super awesome that I could use. Now this is a double-edged sword simply because while it's RNG that you may have a chance to get some really good gear out of this, even when I did not, I wasn't feeling like my character was gimped because I could still play through the entire expansion's content, all chapters up to the current point in the story, in just mediocre gear because of the difficulty that we already talked about in story mode. Additionally, I do have the option to go and do other group content like operations and things like that if I really wanted to go hunt for a chance to get the BIS gear out there for SWTOR. I suppose that's the positive here. The negative on the other hand is that this is a really weird way to reward players for grinding daily CXP, hoping to get something beneficial for their class or their characters every time they fill that bar, and instead you're rewarded with an RNG loot box. I'm not a big fan of this, and I'm not sure how many of you returning players will look at that and say, yeah, that is crap. And it really seems to be BioWare's favorite thing to do now. And we all know the story about how the cartel market became so saturated with all these RNG boxes, and how they went and put Grand Chance cubes into Hyper Crate, so that's an RNG box within an RNG box. And now we get more RNG boxes for leveling up post level 70. From the outside looking in, I don't know if this is because of the data they have, which simply means the player base loves RNG boxes, so let's give them some more, or they really are just thrusting this thing down our throats without any choice. I will leave that debate up to the current SWTOR players to give us some insights on what's been going on, but let's move on to the future with this. In Update 5.10, Jedi Under Siege, we do know that acquiring gear will be made a lot more simpler. There's going to be more diverse way to get some of the better gear in game come the new update. You can either play through the hard mode of the operation, also known as the master mode for the Gods from the Machine raid, to get some of these new masterwork armor, or you could do it through gameplay as well by simply playing the new content on the upcoming planet of Ossus. Now this is where I feel that BioWare can redeem themselves with this command rank crate thing, because we know there's going to be new daily missions on Ossus and other form of content on the planet, which is something that I really missed seeing, having played Shadow of Raven and then moving to Knights of the Fallen Empire and Knights of the Eternal Throne. Having that open planet where players can go around and pick up quests and have that sense of MMO back in the game is one positive. but being able to earn some of the good gear in game through content like this is also another positive. So acquiring Masterwork armor using Masterwork crystals, which is gathered from doing this new content in Ossus, is just an additional way to help players mitigate opening command crates every time they level up a rank and getting nothing. So that's progression, and I touched a little bit about content, so I want to dive deeper into that as well. I think this is a very popular feedback from plenty of players over the last couple of years, and that is Star Wars The Old Republic doesn't feel like an MMORPG anymore. It feels very much like a single player game with heavy story, with multiplayer components added in, from the PvP to the game's existing old flashpoints and operations to the new operations, which is all optional. And I do see that, I do feel that. I played all 3 expansions back to back without any break, and at no point the game made me stop and say, alright, now you gotta do a bunch of these side quests to either get more lore or meet a certain requirement before you can progress on in the story. And that's understandable because nobody likes time gating stuff, nobody likes getting roadblocked, especially as a returning player. And the other side to that is that there's not a whole lot of people in those areas. In the Knights of the Fallen Empire expansion, however, you do get to a point where you get to the planet Odessen, and Odessen does have some content in between that, again, right now is optional for returning players because no one is running them, or what I should say is there's no real reason to do so, because where we are at with the story right now is further along, and unless you're a diehard SWTOR fan and you really want to soak in the lore, then yeah, you would take your time with Odessen. I pretty much just moved on, playing all these chapters back to back. And again, as for content and making the game feel more like an MMO again, I come back to Game Update 5.10, Jedi Under Siege, because it seems like what they're trying to do with the new planet Ossus is to give players more options to run around, pick up activities, and I hope we get a good mix between single player style side quests that lets you group up with friends and add more heroics as well, and more challenging content in the landscape that really makes players feel like they need one another, or the illusion that, yeah, this is a community that's playing the game together. Nonetheless, Ossus and 5.10 will really show us where BioWare stands in terms of the content and making the game more engaging and appealing again, especially to MMORPG fans who are also SWTOR fans that are returning to check it out in December. Let's get to the story now, and I want to put a quick spoiler image on the screen to let you know that I will be talking about some stuff that's going to be happening, and if you are a returning player have not done Knights of the Fallen Empire and Knights of the Eternal Throne, then I highly suggest skipping this part and coming back to it once you've played it. Let's dive into it, and first and foremost, I want to say, when I think of Star Wars The Old Republic, I think about the good stories in this game. Hands down, one of the best MMORPG stories one could hope for, especially with the core vanilla game and all the classes stories that you can now play for free up to level 50. Those were some of the best times I've had in SWTOR, and I didn't even care that I did most of it alone, single player, because I was engaged enough in the writing, in the voice acting, and in these characters that I became attached to it, especially attached to my character, because those were my decisions that helped shape the narrative for me. With Knights of the Fallen Empire, again, very well documented, the main story got unified, just like the previous expansions before it, where all class stories sort of ended and everybody was on the same path now, regardless of what class you are or what side you're on. This was a deal breaker for many, and years after, I think most of us will come to the realization that while we would appreciate BioWare bringing more branching class stories back, the reality is the scope of the work and financials and resources involved when you think about the various different voice acting, the costs for making all the cinematics individually for each class story. I think with where the game is at, it's beyond their financial capability to continue producing these class stories. So by having a unified storyline, firstly, it's cost effective. Secondly, easy to manage. But unfortunately, the trade-off is not everyone will like it. And that's especially true of the Outlander storyline and the first time I played it on a boosted character. In short, Knights of the Fallen Empire and Knights of the Eternal Throne, it's all about the Sith Emperor Vitiate / Valkorion / Tenebrae. It's as Star Wars-y as Star Wars can get, in a sense that it's about family, because you learn more about this crazy web of Vitiate and his journey to become immortal and how he drags his kids into it. They all play a big part, and for me, what I enjoyed this playthrough was mostly my participation, which simply means that was my character from my Sith Warrior storyline, and because I'm so attached to my character, I was able to sit back and enjoy the entire storyline playing out before me and making some choices here and there. And in Knights of the Fallen Empire, you do get a few choices which makes you either align with Valkorion and use his power or don't, and in the end it really didn't matter come the next expansion, but it was kind of fun seeing the outcome. As for heavy decisions that matter, there were a couple that stood out. but not enough for me to really look back on these two Outlander expansions and go, ooh, that was fun, that was great, I want to do that again on a different character. The one for me that stood out was my decisions that let Koth, a new companion from Zakul, and I drove him away because of my evil decision that I made. And the other one was romancing Lana. And besides embracing Valkorian's powers to defeat his son Arkan, like I said, nothing much stood out. And as for the story chapters themselves, because I'm a returning player and I'm playing it now, I have the benefit of playing all the chapters back to back to back. And at launch, players had to wait a few months or a few weeks before each chapter was released. So there was some time gating there. And I can't speak about that experience, obviously, because I wasn't there. But now as a returning player, yeah, there's pretty much no stopping in between. And because you get to see the entire story play out back to back, there's a better flow, in my opinion, and it makes it a lot more engaging. What you do in those story chapters, however, is an up and down experience. At the beginning of Knights of the Fallen Empire, things start off slowly, and because the story is setting the scene, new location, new characters, you're buying into it a lot more. And then the combat comes into play, which is very ordinary and very standard. BioWare uses this checkpoint mechanic where as you progress through the story, you hit several checkpoints on an area or on a map, and then scripted things happen. Monsters appear, this person appears, that boss appears, take them down, and then move forward from cutscene to cutscene to cutscene. There was a few chapters in Knights of the Fallen Empire which I was really frustrated with because it seemed like BioWare simply ran out of ideas and threw out both these chapters, and every checkpoint, all they were doing was just spawning Sky Troopers after Sky Troopers after Sky Troopers. And that's the downside of doing stuff like this back to back, is because it's very easy to get burnout on reused and rehashed mechanics. It did seem like they wanted to show off the design of these Sky Troopers, but yeah, it really got tiring after a while. In the Eternal Throne expansion, things does get a lot better, and I did see and feel that BioWare was trying to diversify my experience throughout that expansion's playthrough. Because in some chapters, yep, you do have that wave after wave checkpoint mechanic as you're moving the story along from cutscene to cutscene, but they've also tried something new. There was one chapter in particular where we were about to storm Vea's party back in Zakul, and we had to infiltrate this party ballroom thing, and it was one giant puzzle because you had to sneak around. You and Agent Sean were in disguise, so it was all about getting key codes and unlocking access to the kitchen first, and then sneaking your way up to the barracks, and just moving the story along in a way that didn't require any sort of killing. Now that was fun and refreshing, but throughout both expansions, I did feel like, yeah, SWTOR could have definitely used more of this sort of diversity. Ultimately though, from a design standpoint for the past two expansions, I just felt BioWare ran out of ideas, but their main selling point was still the story and all these cinematic cutscenes and dialogues. The presentation was fantastic. The in-between, not so much. As for the story itself, I'm going to touch on this briefly because I know my opinion is not going to be popular, but I, as a Sith warrior and a Force user, did sort of enjoy it in this playthrough, either because it's my first time, or I'm excited to be back in SWTOR, or it's that returning player nostalgia that's sort of blanketing my experience from any real issues out there. But I'm also aware that for non-Force users, your bounty hunters, your Imperial agents and all that stuff, you guys kind of got shafted because apparently some stuff don't make sense for you. And because I don't play either of those classes, I can't speak for you guys' experience. So your mileage sure will vary. So for final thoughts about my experience back as a returning player, from a story perspective, I came out of Knights of the Fallen Empire and Knights of the Eternal Throne feeling a little good about things because I ended up, through my own decisions, as the new Emperor, and I'm looking forward to continuing my adventures into the new Iokath and the Traitor storylines, which I have no idea what the story is about, so please don't spoil anything for me. As for other experiences I want to talk about as a returning player, yes, firstly, the player base and population. I've been playing SWTOR in secret for about 2.5 weeks now, and because I'm in Southeast Asia, logging onto North American servers, my time zone will always differ, so it'll be off-peak hours whenever I'm on, but fleet numbers or player numbers on the fleet will fluctuate a lot, so sometimes I see between 80 to 90 on a weekday, and on weekends I see up to 150 people on the Imperial fleets. I don't know how to gauge if that is a good enough population in case that's important to you if you want to return to the game for group content. but also keep in mind that I am on a server, and SWTOR does have a few servers now consolidated to only a handful from the previous number. I was on the Shadowlands, I think, and I somehow ended up on Starforge, so that's the server that I'm on. So keep in mind these player numbers could be different for your server as well. Another thing I want to touch on is the SWTOR launcher. The launcher is absolutely terrible, and I hope BioWare can do something about it. My first update after coming back for 2 years, I was stuck at initializing data or reorganizing data on the launcher for over 3 hours, and it didn't move. And I thought, wow, this was going to be a large update. Turns out it was some of the back-end program that BioWare uses, which is bitrate or something like that was causing the launcher to work slowly. So I had to open my task manager and change the number of cores specifically for the SWTOR launcher, and then switch back my cores, and then it started moving. So this is a real pain in the ass, and it's something that I hope we'll see a fix to, because there's going to be lots of returning players that I'm sure will encounter the same problem. So take note of how I got around that issue, and it could help you too. And that pretty much sums up my experience of returning to SWTOR and doing everything all the way up to the Knights of the Eternal Throne expansion. If you have recently returned yourself, hey, feel free to share your thoughts and opinions in the comments section below, including what you would like to see improved on in the future. And speaking of the future, 510, Jedi Under Siege, and that rumored expansion coming next year is what really got me back, because I'm interested to see just how much BioWare has changed or are going to change SWTOR. And from all the previews and the news articles and even the things they showed off in that teaser stream, I hope they do address things like the command rank loot box thing, adding more MMO style content, which, to be fair, they're sort of getting back to. A couple of months ago or a month ago, they released a new PvP update. It was for a new Hutball Warzone, I believe. Fame and Fortune or something like that. So we'll wait and see how everything develops. Hit the like button for more on MMOs, and feel free to subscribe to the channel for more MMO content. Once again, I'm sure I'm Adrian, and I thank you for watching. May the Force be with you. Hey folks, welcome to the end screen. Thank you very much for watching that video. If you want to watch more, you can click on the cards at the bottom here, and feel free to subscribe to the channel with the button down there, which will give you notifications on all my latest uploads. Later, Gator.